Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. Well, hello, friend.
Oh. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I'm hoping my voice will hang in there. I had to
You
take
got
you to the
this.
dugout this weekend. It was chaos. And Garrett was laughing at me like everything was clenching. And then I was like, I need to go direct traffic over there. So I was yelling, hats and gloves, or helmets and bats, over and over and over. But the three coaches were kind of okay. I love them. They're very kind. I had to handle some business. It's all fine.
You
I was like,
boss
that's my
mom.
mom. That's my mom. That's my mom the whole time.
He's so proud.
He is proud. He likes when I'm up in his business for now.
Oh, I love that. It's great that he's getting started into sports.
Oh yeah, we're getting him going. I think it's good to be a part of a team. I think it develops you a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we grew up playing sports. My brother played sports. We're big hockey people.
Oh, I love hockey.
Yes, I like recently became more of a fan in the last couple years. Probably like last 10 years became more
Mm-hmm.
of a football fan.
Because your brother was really good, wasn't he? He was a good hockey player.
He was a super good hockey player, yeah, and he still sometimes plays men's league, but yeah, so we were big hockey people and my I recently became a little bit of a football fan like in the last 10 years.
Well, you have to be a football fan to be my friend.
I know. Well,
This
thank God
is
I like started that process before I met you.
yeah, it's a prerequisite.
Especially
Mm-hmm.
especially Michigan.
Oh, go blue.
Go blue.
I know I
And go
can't handle it.
Buffs every time.
Davina convinced me to get home what does it say? Midwest girl. I have a sweatshirt now that says Midwest girl.
I love that.
Very sweet. I know. They do have an abundance of serial killers in the Midwest though, so I'm sure we'll be getting to that.
You're not wrong.
Also, can we just talk about the fact that we thought maybe four people ever would listen to our podcast, and mostly it'd be people we forced, and that is not what's happening.
I know. People are actually enjoying it.
I know we're so happy that you guys are enjoying it, and we just hope to keep putting out some good episodes. So we love feedback, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and all the things.
All the things. We're still getting some of that going, like Facebook and all that, but we're on some of the sites, some of the socials. So
We're
follow
learning.
us, come support us, and thank you guys for already like loving us and supporting us. That's so cool.
We've had so many nice messages and great feedback, and we just
Oh
really
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. One of my friends, I already mentioned this a little bit. One of my really really good friends, one of my best friends from growing up, is a critic. Like she
Oh,
can be too direct sometimes, and
she
she
knows her
loves it.
stuff. Oh, that makes me so
She
happy.
loves it. So
Well,
we're
because
doing.
it's kind of how we roll. Just jump in. Just jump in the deep end of the pool and
Yeah,
hope
why
that people
not?
are nice while we figure it out.
Exactly. Um, Janine,
Mm-hmm.
speaking of sports,
Yes.
we're covering a tough one today.
Oh, it's a doozy.
It is a doozy. It's taken us a little bit of time to prep for it because there's so much stuff. So
So
much.
much stuff. We actually made an attempt already and had so much stuff we had to just full stop and revisit it.
Yes. I forced us to revisit it,
That's
but
true. That's true. We just had so much stuff and we didn't know how to organize all of it. So this is
Mhm.
technically our second attempt.
Second attempt. But here's the thing. I want to do this one right because there is so much information and
Mm-hmm.
so much history, and there's so many components that go into this case that I just didn't want to not do this well.
That's right. And I think as a domestic violence therapist too, this case, I wonder sometimes if deep in my subconscious, this isn't part of why I got into this work because I
Mhm.
was about 10
Mhm.
and I was way more fascinated than a 10-year-old girl should have been. Like the signs were there, Nat, that I was
Mhm.
going to have a weird job someday. But I
Mhm.
just remember being really fascinated and I didn't know a whole lot.
Well, we haven't even told them what the case is on yet.
Oh, okay. I'll let you do that.
So today's case is titled If I Can't Have You, and it is the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. So the perpetrator we're looking at is Mr. O.J. Simpson.
O.J. Simpson, which is just nuts.
Yes. And if some of you guys don't know, which I'm kind of assuming most people know, he recently passed away from cancer. Go with maybe God.
Well, in the words of our beloved and terrifying Nancy Grace, he is en route to hell. That's what she thinks. I don't know that I share that opinion because that's above my pay grade.
Yes.
But Nancy Grace was worked up about this one.
She's worked up about a lot of things.
Always.
So, do you want to get us started?
Sure. I think, Natalie and I broke up some of the research because there is so much. So we focused in different areas. We know that everybody knows the nuts, the nuts and bolts, like the basic things in this case. So we're not trying to recreate the wheel with all of that. We're going to touch on the history, the timeline, some of the more interesting things we found in our research that maybe we didn't know before. But then really our goal is to look at, from our perspective as treatment professionals, the psychology and then the heart of prevention and what could have been done in this case. That's where our focus is going to be after we lay out all of the information.
Yeah.
So now take it away. I know you're going to break down some of his history.
Yes. So starting with like when he was young, that's kind of where I'm starting us off with, because I think there's some good information that sets us up well to kind of know how he is later on.
Yep.
We all know that OJ was this tremendous athlete. He was a two-time. Here's the thing, y'all. I'm going to read this off because he was so good. There's no way I could remember what he did.
Too many accolades.
Too many things. Yes. So he was a two-time unanimous All-American from the University of Southern California and won the Heisman Trophy in 1968 when he was a senior in college. He was the number one pick in the 1969 NFL AFL Common Draft.
Amazing.
I know. Like just one of those natural born athletes, Janine.
And a standout. Just a standout.
A standout, yes. He ended his career with 11,236 rushing yards, 2,142 receiving yards, and 990 kick return yards, totaled 14,368 all-purpose yards in 135 games.
That's just a lot of numbers.
I know. He scored a total of 76 touchdowns.
That's amazing.
Yes, that was a mouthful, y'all, but I had to get it all in there because it's pretty nuts.
One funny thing that you and I did talk about, though, the dude can't catch.
He can't catch. There was a period in when he was with the Buffalo Bills where I can't remember the coach's name, y'all. I'm sorry. This was before my football fan time.
Yes.
So, but he had a coach who put him when he was with the Bills, who put him as a receiver or something. Yeah. And he couldn't catch worth shit, y'all.
Like, no, he can't catch. He can't catch for crap.
He can't catch. I catch
better than he does. My grandma would catch better than he did.
Yeah, same. And I have like no hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
So there was a short period of time where he was a receiver and couldn't catch. And I think if they didn't fire that coach and hire the coach who utilized OJ's skills, he would have been like a nobody.
Yeah, I don't know that he would have even stayed in the NFL very long.
Oh, no, he wouldn't have because he couldn't catch worth crap. So yes, he also went down in history for rushing more than 2,000 yards. So that was a thing. That was a really big thing. In the documentary that is on Netflix, you guys, there's a clip of that game when he does it, and both teams were rooting for him. Both teams when he went down.
I do remember that.
Yeah, when he went down for running 2,000 yards. To wrap up his success, he was an all Pro Bowl selection 5 times and played 11 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. So quick pause. When he was in college into his professional career, this was during the time of all the chaos with Rodney King and the LAPD. So this was when all of that was happening. And one of the big components of this whole case and of his life, really, at the beginning of his life, is he disowned his race.
Yes.
So when people would address him or ask him or talk to him about like civil rights stuff,
Yeah.
going to bat for civil rights, I know not necessarily the actual civil rights movement, but civil rights in general and
Yes.
all of that, he just said, he literally basically said, I'm not black or white, I'm OJ Simpson.
And he just very much preferred to hang out with white people.
Yes.
And he took no offense when they did commercials and things and they couldn't have any black people in the commercials with him.
Yeah.
He was kind of down to capitalize on his moment. And who are we to criticize that? I mean, it was hard for black men to get ahead anyway.
Yeah.
So here's one who's having success. We are not going to go into all the racial dynamics because nobody needs to hear like a couple white ladies break this down. But I do really encourage you to watch the Netflix documentary Made in America. And then there's just tons of stuff online to read.
Yeah.
The juxtaposition of OJ's case, his history, everything that was going on top of Rodney King and the LAPD issues, and also even from a substance abuse perspective, which I'm passionate about, the difference between how rock cocaine was prosecuted versus white powder cocaine, which is very much a black, white, rich, poor dynamic. That is all worth knowing more about. And it really makes this case a lot richer and more interesting when you consider all of the forces that were at play.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving to his childhood. So OJ was born in San Francisco, California. He lived with his family in the housing projects in a low income neighborhood. When he was a child, he developed rickets. Yes, he developed rickets and had to wear braces on his legs until about the age of 5.
Oh, I never knew that.
I know you didn't.
Never ever knew that.
I was like, oh my gosh. And I looked it up and it's this is probably not the best thing to say, but it reminded me of what's that movie? Forrest Gump. And how Forrest Gump was this crazy runner when he got his braces off his legs. And I'm like,
run, Forrest, run.
Run, OJ, run.
Run, OJ, run.
That's actually in a commercial. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
So it reminded me of that because OJ was such a phenomenal runner. I was like, dang, Forrest Gump, CR. So he had to have braces on his legs, and he got them off when he was about 5 years old. And also around that same time, maybe just a little before he got those braces off, his parents actually got divorced.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. And I'll get a little more into some of his parent dynamics, more specifically his dad here in a minute.
Oh man. I mean, that's a lot for a little person though.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
he had to go through a lot. Well, and here's the thing. I'll get into it now. His parents divorced when he was 4. And so his mother raised him and his siblings.
Okay.
In a low income area. So, he did get into some stuff, but later on, so later in his life, in his adult life, he actually found out that his dad was gay. And I then did more research into that. And his dad was actually a well-known drag queen in the Bay Area.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Well, and that was in the 90s. So I'm guessing that was not real popular.
Big no-no. It was a big no-no. So he found that out much later in life. He didn't know that as a child. Growing up without his dad would pop in here and there and like give money.
Okay.
But he wasn't around. So he
Did his dad go to his games, like his football games and stuff?
No, he didn't. No. He grew up without his dad being present.
Okay.
Right. Later in life, found out all this other stuff when he was a teenager. He actually joined a street gang called Persian Warriors and was briefly incarcerated. He was actually incarcerated 3 times as a teenager until he met a famous baseball player, Willie Mays, who basically told him to avoid trouble, which apparently had a really big impact on him.
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah. So I think what's really cool is that, he was such a athlete, like strong athlete, and it was another athlete, not a football player, a baseball player, but it was another athlete who was like, hey man, and I mean, I don't know what he said, I'm guessing, right? Hey man, figure it
Right.
out. You're talented. And that really had a lasting impact on him because that's, he went into being a professional football player.
Well, and especially not having his father around, having an older Black
Mm-hmm.
athlete who had a lot of success. See,
Mm-hmm.
that probably meant a lot and had a pretty major impact, I would think.
Yes, yes. So then when OJ was still a teenager, he met his first wife, stole her from his best friend.
Oh, it's so sad.
I know. I'm like
Right under his nose, like right under his
right
nose.
in front of him.
Oh,
Yes, the
you hate
story,
to see it.
I know. The story was something along the lines of like his best friend was dating her name's Marguerite.
Mm-hmm.
I just think is a beautiful name anyway. So best friend was dating Marguerite. One of his other friends says something about it. OJ shows up at a party with Marguerite, and the best friend is there. And the
Oh,
best friend
wow.
didn't know that they were broken up now.
He just swooped in and took
He
his
just,
his friend's girl.
yeah, he wasn't like, hey, I really like you. You should break up with that guy. He just took her. And then the dude found out they weren't dating when they got to this party.
Oh man.
Real winner of a friend.
Yeah.
So he met her in high school. She said at one point that he was not a very good guy in high school because that was kind of when he was getting into all his trouble.
Yeah.
But they ended up getting married when they were still teenagers and had 3 children.
Okay.
Sadly, one of their daughters did die in their home swimming pool.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, yeah. So he was married to Marguerite in 1967. They divorced in 1979.
Mm.
He then ended his college and professional football career, which we already covered at the beginning, and then entered into the Hollywood scene. However, Janine, I just learned this.
Huh.
He had done some acting in college as well
Oh, I didn't know that.
and was described as a professional actor back then. So he appeared in some different television shows when he was in college.
Well, that makes a little more sense because what he did was kind of unusual. He just made this grand pronouncement, I'm done with football, I'm going to Hollywood.
Yes, I'm going to go to be an actor. I mean, yes, and I think part of it was because he had done some of that in college.
Yes. So it feels a little bit less random.
Yeah, which I mean, I'll be honest, when I read that, I was like, okay, he seems a little less impulsive.
Uh-huh.
He really got into his acting career after his football career ended. This was about the time that he met Nicole. So he met Nicole in 1977. So let's be real. If you do the math, I said,
Yeah, he didn't get divorced till 1979.
yes. So he
No.
started dating Nicole while he was still married to Marguerite. And this was a whole thing too, because Marguerite was a Black woman and Nicole was a white woman.
Mm.
So he left his wife for this 18-year-old.
It's also interesting because they were living in Brentwood at the time because I believe
Yep.
his daughter died at the Rockingham house, which we're going to get
Yes.
into.
Yes. In the swimming
So
pool.
it's interesting that he was married to Marguerite in that house
Mm-hmm.
and then was dating Nicole. And he was pretty out in the open about this. Like he didn't keep a lot of this a secret.
No. Well, and so that was the big thing. He was never faithful to Marguerite,
Hmm.
like ever. He might have displayed trying to, or at least tried to display being faithful at the beginning. So I
Mm.
can't imagine she would have wanted to marry someone who wasn't.
Mm.
But what I know is he was always gone. He was always traveling. He was always, playing football or whatever. So he was always gone. He wasn't being faithful and he wasn't home. So he was gone out of state when his daughter died. He was
Oh.
also gone when his first daughter was born.
And I read that he blamed Marguerite for
He
his
did.
daughter dying, which is so awful.
Yeah. And that, from what I know, impacted, right? He left his wife for Nicole.
Right.
However, he blamed her. And then that's why he wanted to get divorced from her, which I'm like, okay, whatever.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're
So,
back. I don't like him.
yes, right. So, and in any of the interviews about his daughter, he
Mm-hmm.
never displayed any emotion
Mm-hmm.
about her loss. I'm not saying he
Mm-mm.
wasn't emotional by himself, maybe with people who really cared about him and he cared for, if I can say he cared for people.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying he wasn't emotional, that he didn't have emotions around his child dying. However, he never displayed that ever.
Mm.
And as we'll get into, never displayed any remorse around Nicole dying either,
Mm.
which again, we'll get into when with the crime part. But yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
already is showing some patterns, some
Absolutely.
personality patterns, some power and control patterns. And I say power and control even with the affairs, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying every human who has an affair demonstrates power and control dynamics. However, when you are consistently having an affair, it is a power and control dynamic because you're basically saying, I can do whatever I want to do and you're going to stay with me.
Absolutely. And raise my children and
Yes.
absolutely. You know, it's interesting because when I was looking into things, I'm big on character. You know this working with
Hmm.
me. And that's a centerpiece of our work with people is what's your
Hmm.
character? What are your core values? What matters to you? One of the things that's fascinating to me about OJ is he's just a freaking cheater. Not only does he cheat on his wife with whoever, whenever, but even when they played golf.
Yeah.
His friends had to hire a caddy to follow him around because
Yeah.
he would cheat so much in golf
Yeah.
and he would get away with things. And one of his friends said, if he could use you, he would.
Yes. Well, and there was an example that was shared about him and his friends when they were in school and in high school playing craps in the bathroom. And
Mm.
they got caught. They got walked to the principal's office, and OJ leaves with the teacher who caught him. And they're like, "Where are you going?" He said, "Oh, I was just helping him walk them down." And he got away with it.
Oh my gosh.
The teacher wasn't like, turn your butt back around and go back in there. He figured out how to talk his way, how to schmooze his way out of almost any situation.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, like, why did his friends hang in with him? Although I will say, I have to tell you something very funny about my grandfather in this moment. So my grandfather, you know, he's just a whole vibe, big
Hmm.
personality.
Hmm.
So he had some interesting connections and he would gamble, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
But one of my clearest memories of him as a kid is there's toll plazas everywhere in Chicago. Everywhere, every road you're on, practically, you have to pay toll. So he would have all this change everywhere. And as a kid, I always thought that was cool because he just had change coming out of his ears, like always had
Yep.
change. But he would fake throwing coins into the thing and then they'd put the gate up. So he'd pull up to the toll plaza and he would fake throwing change into the bucket that grabs the toll and the gate would go up.
Your grandfather did this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I brought it up with my parents because my mom was like, I don't think he did that. And my dad goes, oh, he absolutely did that. And we laughed.
Yeah.
He told, so it's not like he never paid toll, but this is that kind of vibe. Like,
Hmm.
can I get away with? I'm going to do whatever
Just
I
about
can to get
anything.
away with things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's really the big main things about his history. So again, right, as I mentioned, grew up without a dad, grew up in a low income neighborhood, joined a gang. However, some of that criminal mentality, right? This is
Yeah,
why we put people in MRT groups. He still had some of that criminal mindset of like,
absolutely.
whatever I can get away with, I'm going to get away with it.
Absolutely. And then, as he and Nicole kind of progressed, he said things like when he married her, she brought love into my home,
Yep.
blah, 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 which is fine. I'm sure for Marguerite, that feels like kind of a slap in the face because she held down the fort all those years, but it's Nicole who brought love into his house.
Yeah.
Now, Nicole was 18
Yes,
when they
18.
got together. 18.
And
And
he was 30. I think.
he was 30. And I can't help but think about this young, I don't know if she was naive or not, but most of us are a little bit naive at 18. And this powerful athlete comes in and kind of sweeps her off her feet, and they're off to the races. And
Yeah.
I don't think she knew what she was in for,
Yeah.
you know? And so
Yeah.
Nicole has a couple of kids. OJ again starts cheating because that's what he does, because he's entitled to what he's entitled to.
Well, he literally said something along the lines of like she was fat, so
Mm.
he didn't want to sleep with her or something.
He is lucky that the women of America did not know about that
Oh, yeah.
time,
Yeah.
because I think we would have burned it down before he had a chance to.
Oh, 100%.
That is so mean. That's one of the worst things I think you could do to your partner.
Yes, like
There's
they're
me while I
literally,
have your babies.
yeah, they're literally carrying your baby, and
Mm,
you're like, I'm gonna sleep with other women because you're fat. Like, man,
I can't.
if we didn't already make a pact to not say the F word on here,
I know, right? I know we're
like,
trying really hard not to.
yeah.
So, probably around the late 80s is when Nicole starts trying to get some help. So, I'm guessing the domestic violence probably heated up after they got married, because that's
Mhm.
typically how it works. I don't
Mhm.
know. He might have been abusive when they were dating. One piece that's really important to note is on their first date,
Yes, I
when
was
she
hoping
got
you'd say
home.
this.
Oh yeah, I got you, girl. When she got home from her first date with OJ, her jeans were ripped, her pants were ripped, and
Yep.
she had a friend there. I don't know if it was friend or roommate, who said, "What happened?" And she basically said, "Well, yeah, he was kind of rough, but I really like him."
He was forceful.
He was forceful. That was the word, forceful.
Mhm. Forceful.
But I really like him. And so I guess there were signs. I don't know if he was using domestic violence, but he certainly was at least being sexually abusive kind of from jump.
Yep.
So
Well,
this
and
gets,
showing
hmm,
that power and
oh,
control behavior right away.
and the entitlement, right?
Yes.
So you're with me and I'm entitled to whatever. If you're going to be with me, OJ, then you're going to do XYZ. And we're going to get more into the objectification. One of the things I researched was, what was Nicole's timeline? Like
Mhm.
what was she trying to do? How was she trying to save herself? And the most heartbreaking thing about this case, in my opinion, she tried so hard to save herself. She did go back to him. That is what victims do. We know this. Many times it is just a part of that power and control dynamic. They don't have quite as much in terms of resources and the ability to get away, which we've talked about a little bit. But she really did try. So
Mm-hmm.
the first report that I could find was January 1st, 1989.
Okay.
Basically, a call goes out to 911, and there's someone pretty hysterical on the phone who needs help. And so an officer responds. And when the officer pulls up to the gate, this gate becomes kind of a centerpiece for a lot of the drama that goes on.
Yep.
The cop pulls up to the gate and he's trying to figure out how he's going to get in the gate. And Nicole jumps out of the bushes and she's in sweatpants and a bra, and she's dirty and she's cold and she's screaming, "He's going to kill me. He's going to kill
Mm-hmm.
me." And she said it multiple times, and finally just kind of fell into the police officer's arms.
Mm-hmm.
And the officer was saying, "Do you want me to call the police? What do you want me to do?" And she's saying, "I've called 8 times already and there's no reports.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reports." The cops would come and talk to OJ and they would leave.
Which is so crazy, but
Yes.
lines up with him
Yes.
in that he got away with everything.
Well, and also one of the first things he did in Brentwood is he established himself as friends with the chief of that district.
Of course he did.
That was one of the first things he did. He called them the boys.
Mm.
Called them
Sweet.
the boys. Right. I know, right? So on January 1st, okay, this happens. The cops pull up. He's got Nicole. Nicole's hysterical. OJ comes out and he's yelling. He's
Mm-hmm.
yelling, he's yelling at the cop, he's yelling at Nicole, all of it. And the police officer asked Nicole, "Do you want him arrested?" And she said yes, which is incredibly brave in that moment.
Yes.
She says yes. And the officer tells him, go get dressed. I got to bring you down, right? Got to bring you down to the station.
Yeah. I would like to, sorry, I
go
want to
ahead.
jump in really quick. The fact that she says yes, because there's been other times where she did say no.
Yes.
The fact that she says yes says she's terrified.
I think she thought he was going to kill her that night. That's what I think.
Yep.
And
Okay.
so she was trying to save her own life. Yes. So OJ, it's like, yeah, whatever. He's going to go back to the house and get dressed. He proceeds to get in his Bentley and take off.
Yeah. Went on the run.
Went on the run, which, I guess is some foreshadowing for future events. But he gets in his Bentley and he hits it and the cop can't find him. So the cop actually does file the report and actually kept the report too in his garage. He kept the report.
Which is so cool.
I know. Well, he tried. He made an attempt. Now, I will tell you, I think it is nonsense that OJ just gets to go get ready and come out whenever he wants, which is really underpins this entire case that OJ just got to do whatever the hell he wanted whenever he wanted to, which is really why everything happened. But at least this officer tried to do a report, tried to arrest him.
I mean, out of all the cops that we kind of focus on, because I know we're going to be focusing on some interesting ones, he did the best job out of all of them.
He did. I mean, she'd already called 8 times and those 8 didn't do anything. It was the 9th guy who tried to do something.
Yeah.
So basically what happened is OJ gets away and the next day OJ called the police chief for that area, right? His buddy. And the guy is at the Rose Bowl. He's at the Rose Bowl and he gets a call from OJ and OJ goes, "Hey man, the boys had to come up here last night." And he immediately starts talking about her as primary aggressor. Well, you should see, you see her injuries, you should see mine, blah, blah, blah. He starts this whole story. And the police chief in the documentary talks about the fact that when he saw her injuries from that night, it was he called OJ a classic batterer. Now he remained friends with them.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a little bit nonsense. And I think that chief, if he could go back, I sense some pretty genuine remorse in that guy.
Oh, yeah.
He made a million mistakes.
Yeah. Well,
it's a million mistakes.
Well, and it's interesting, and we'll probably get more into this when he decides to testify, because he testifies, and then even after he testifies, he's like, "I still love the guy." And I'm like, what?
Like, what is happening, dude?
Why do you love this guy? He's insane.
I know. What'd he do for you? Not much.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
So basically, this had already happened. This is 1989. So I'm assuming this behavior continues. Finally, Nicole has had enough. She hits a point eventually where she moves into her own place and decides, we're separated. I don't want to be with OJ anymore. So this poor brave man named Keith, he has no idea what he's getting himself into. He goes to a club with Keith, this guy that she'd started dating. They go to the club, they see OJ, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we gotta go. We're gonna go home.
We're gonna bounce.
We're gonna bounce, right?" So they go back to the house. They're intimate. They hang out, whatever. The next day, OJ pushes himself in the back door. Basically, pushes in the back door and basically told Keith, "I'm OJ Simpson, and she's still my wife." And he starts hollering at Nicole. And Nicole actually took him to a different room to talk to him.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that happened was because I think the reason she allowed that to happen was because she knew somebody was going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Probably Keith if she didn't talk to him. So she went up, they have the conversation. And what she finds out during this confrontation is that OJ had gone back to the house, stood in the yard, and watched them have sex through a window.
That's so creepy.
I know. He was stalking her.
Ugh.
He was stalking her. And he said things like, "That's my booty. That's my property." And one of his friends on the documentary says he was as jealous as he was a good football player, meaning he had all this skill in football. He had all the skill as a jealous human. He was extraordinarily jealous.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And she ultimately gets back together with OJ, and she got back together with him in part because he was always present.
And it said in that documentary, he was, air quotes, y'all, I'm doing air quotes, doing better. He was being nicer to her. he had given
Yep.
her some space, and she
They
said
still live separate.
still live separate. And she told one of her friends, he's really trying. He's really doing a lot better.
Mm.
Well, then he basically goes back and is like, yeah, see, I got her.
Yep.
I got her back.
I got her back. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share a couple of clips with you and I want to get your hot takes. So
Okay.
on October 25th, 1993. So remember, the last police involvement that we have was 89. Nicole ultimately recanted, by the way, which is something you and I talk about an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
She ultimately recanted and said, I overreacted, I whatever, when she talked to the police that night. This is why the state of Colorado and other states take over the charges when there's a 911 call and
Yeah.
when they go and investigate, because victims
Yep.
often recant. It's safer to recant.
Yep.
So now the state kind of takes over, there's pros and cons to that, but that is what happens now.
Okay.
So October 25th, 1993, on the same evening, there were two 911 calls. And so I'm going to play both of them back to back for you so you can hear them. I want to know your take and the tone difference between the two.
Okay. Do it.
Yeah, can you send someone to my house? What's the problem is, well, my ex-husband or my husband just broke into my house and he's ranting and raving. Now he's just walked out in the front yard. And he been fixing anything? No, but he's crazy. Did you buy what I said? Oh, no. What's he wearing right now? Short pants and a golf shirt. You said he hasn't been drinking? No. Did you? No. Did he have fame or stuff? No. What's your name? Nicole Simpson. Your address? 325 Gretna Green Way. Or the house apartment at the house. Okay, Lisa. Thank you.
Okay, so what do you notice in that call? So that was the first call in that evening on October 25th, 1993.
Yeah. She sounds annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when she says that he's crazy.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Yes. Also, you've mentioned this in a previous episode. All dispatch, they're either like
I know.
rude or just like, I don't care.
I
Like,
know.
it's crazy. Anyway, she seemed annoyed, a little put off.
Yeah, just put off like, oh,
Here we
he goes
go.
again, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to play the second one.
Okay.
Emergency. Get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green. He's back. Please. Okay, what does he look like? He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. It's Simpson over here. Okay, what is he doing there? He's over here. He's somebody over. Wait a minute, what kind of car is he in? He's in a white Bronco. But first of all, he closed that door down to get in. Wait a minute, what's your name? Nicole Simpson. Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever? Yeah. Okay, wait a minute, what's the police? What is he doing? Is he threatening you? I think he's doing that. So what is he doing? I was something about some guy I don't know. There's doing something. I started to sit on the phone and it's all my fault. And then what am I going to do to fix it now? And it's all my fault. It's
So what'd you notice about that second clip, Nat?
Well, the second one, she sounds more scared. She starts crying and she's like, where the heck are you guys?
Yeah.
Like that's she doesn't say that, but that's kind of the tone she gives of, he's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record, So yeah, she sounds more annoyed. She sounds more scared than the other one. Yeah. You can just tell she's kind of at the end point for herself.
Absolutely. So then following this, and this went public. So the 1989 one ultimately went public. And again, Nicole recanted and people kind of chalked it up to they just had a disagreement. He did a little bit of community service, whatever, which was organizing a celebrity golf tournament, which doesn't feel like work to me for him.
That was his community service. I forgot that.
Yeah, he did that in 89.
That is ridiculous.
This time, I don't believe he was arrested. I don't believe there were any formal charges. But this is when Nicole really decides in the next few months. By Mother's Day the following year, she's out for good. She was
Okay.
truly done. She
Okay.
divorced him and she really wanted to be alone. And he's still threatening her. He told her if she went out with Marcus was a young man who was 15 years younger, I want to say 15 years
Okay.
younger than OJ, and he was basically OJ 2.0.
But better.
Younger, better, handsomer, right? And
Mhm.
so that became a real issue for OJ. So he's still kind of threatening and controlling, right?
Yep. Yep.
So that leads us all the way up to the murders.
Okay.
So on the day of the murder, June
Hmm.
12th, 1994,
Hmm.
they went to a dance recital
Yep.
for their daughter. So OJ was there with Nicole Brown and her family. After the dance recital, Nicole's family went out to dinner without
And
OJ.
yes, and I think they mentioned everything seemed fine at the
Yeah,
recital.
seemed fine. There's even pictures of them together at the recital and stuff. Like, this
Okay.
is not, to my knowledge, nothing bad went down at the recital. I think he may have had a little bit of fragility around her family going to dinner without him.
Oh yeah, I think he was
Again,
pissed.
control.
Yeah, he was mad. He went to McDonald's.
He went to McDonald's with, what's his bucket? Cato Kalin?
Yes.
Cato's a whole, I don't know how much we're going to go into Cato, but Cato is a nonsense human
Yeah,
being.
Cato's a whole vibe in
He
himself.
is a whole, I don't even know how those two got together. I don't know
Mm.
that I want to know how they got together. But he ends up at McDonald's with Cato
Yep.
instead of at dinner with the family. And I think he was probably a little bit pissed off about that. But I haven't seen anything. There's no like quotes from him about that, but
Right, right, right.
just a theory.
I think you're accurate.
Uh-huh. So they're at dinner. The Brown family has a lovely dinner. Nicole's mom left her glasses at the restaurant.
Yep.
Ron Goldman was a friend of Nicole's, but also worked at the restaurant. And so there was a call that went out. I want to say it was 10:30-ish at night. A call goes out from Nicole to the restaurant about her mother's glasses. And so Ron's like, yeah, I'll bring them over. So that's how Ron Goldman got involved. That's literally it. Ron Goldman was not in a relationship with Nicole. They weren't, there's nothing to suggest that they had any kind of romantic entanglement whatsoever. This was just a nice man working in a restaurant trying to make his way in Hollywood who brought these glasses home to Nicole.
Yeah.
So that's literally it.
Well, and really quickly, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a timeline written. So it was, I think the call to him went out earlier because around 10:15 that night, the neighbors heard Nicole's dog barking. And then at 11:45, OJ's flying to Chicago.
Okay, that's great. That gives us kind of the beginning and the end. Right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Timeline.
between those times, both of these people are murdered by a knife.
Yeah.
And Nat, you can give some more specifics about the case, about the murder.
Yeah. Yes. So, oh, you guys, it's so gruesome. So between, like Janine said, between that time, 10:15 and 11:45,
Mm-hmm.
those two were killed. They were stabbed. It was total overkill.
Oh yeah.
Total overkill. So, and Janine, help me out because I know this is the part where it gets a little fuzzy. So I know he went over there. Obviously, I shouldn't say he. Okay. A human, probably OJ Simpson, I'm just gonna say, went over there and with the intention of killing Nicole.
Yes, at least that's really what it looks like.
That's really what it looks like. And Ron Goldman happened to be there with the glasses, like you said.
Yep.
So I think Simpson went for Nicole, stabbed her, then Ron Goldman potentially got involved.
Yep.
OJ went at him, and the crappy thing was, obviously we haven't been to the location and the house has been since torn down, but it sounds like Nicole was probably at the back door.
Yes.
And Ron was between like where Nicole was and then a fence.
Yeah. He had nowhere to go.
He had nowhere to go. So he couldn't plow through OJ, and he was literally locked. He was literally locked in a cage,
He was
basically.
stuck. Yep.
So OJ kills him, or at least stabs him, goes back to Nicole, I believe,
Yeah.
and really finished her off.
Yes.
Literally, I know this is gruesome, but it's so important to know it was such overkill. He cut her throat
Mm-hmm.
and nicked her vertebrae. He
Yeah.
cut so deep.
Yes.
Her head in this documentary, she had to, for her funeral, had to wear a turtleneck
Yes.
because her head looked like it was almost severed off.
Well, and the thing is, with her injuries, no defensive wounds.
No defensive wounds.
So the interesting thing to me is I wonder if she, got hit. So it was such a surprise and it was so vicious.
Yes.
But then Ron Goldman fought, man. He put up a fight.
Oh, he had like fingers almost cut off because he was trying to get away.
He fought back.
Yeah.
But again, there was just nowhere for him to go. And then we see overkill in his injuries as well. So he had one stab wound to the abdomen that hit an artery, and that was likely lethal. But again, probably after the abdominal wound, again with the neck, same thing to Ron Goldman.
Yes.
This was a gory scene, and one of the most chilling parts is OJ and Nicole's children were upstairs asleep. So at any point they could have come down and happened upon their mom in that.
Yeah. And that part is so crazy to me, Janine, because you and I, whenever we do evaluations and people say, yeah, the kids were home, but they were asleep, they like make sure to let us know they were asleep.
Right.
And for me, it's insane because I'm like, most of the time kids can hear arguing unless you just have like crazy hard sleeper kids.
I know.
So it's hard to believe that the kids had no clue what was happening.
Yeah.
But we do know that there was really loud music playing.
Yes.
And so maybe they just kind of were used to, I don't know, that kind of noise and could sleep through it. And then they probably couldn't hear if there was screaming happening because the music was so loud.
Absolutely. They might not have heard. Some kids do. I mean, my kid can sleep through just about anything. So maybe they did sleep through it. But either way, the fact that they were upstairs and could have come down and seen their mother in that position is just
horrific. Or even came down and saw the murderer, aka OJ.
Right.
Doing it.
Well, here's what's interesting. So when police stumble upon the scene, right, they're like, this is a crime scene. They lock it down, whatever. They immediately go to OJ's house because they don't know. First of all, they need to notify him. Because he's one of the next of kin, because they're still, I believe they were still in the divorce process. I don't actually think the divorce was fully final.
Yeah.
So they had to notify him. They go to the house. Unfortunately, it's Mark Furman, which we'll get into. He's just a jackass.
He is horrible.
He was LAPD's finest that night, apparently. And he goes to OJ's house, and what he observes is blood on the handle of the Bronco, the door of the white Bronco.
Yep.
And so he's like, oh, no, I mean, now I don't know what's happening. So he jumps a fence. He goes and talks to everybody's best friend, Gato, who's a hot garbage mess. Gato's like, it seemed like there was an earthquake, like somebody banged on the door. Like Gato is just kind of a useless witness. But anyway, that all happens. And Mark Furman actually finds a glove in the alleyway next to not an alleyway, outside of the door, outside of the window at the Rockingham house where Cato said he heard banging on the wall.
Yeah.
One of the gloves was found there. And that's what comes up then in the trial.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
and the footprint,
and the footprint was at the murder scene.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So basically the story, OJ's story, he's in Chicago. He had to go to Chicago for something. He had some kind of an event.
It was with the Hertz.
Huh?
It was with the Hertz car company.
The Hertz car company. He had something going on. And so he dips for Chicago. And that's going to be his alibi, right? His alibi is going to be
I'm in Chicago.
Here, I was at the airport.
Well, and what's interesting is when they go to Cato, when they see Cato, Cato says that. He's like, oh, he's in Chicago. And the police officer actually feels like, oh, thank God.
Oh yeah, he's thinking, well, he's alive then, he's okay, and didn't kill Nicole, right?
Right.
So, the police are gathering evidence, all this stuff is happening. They're talking to Simpson, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, what happened, and again, this doesn't happen to normal people. This happens to OJ.
Yep.
His legal team, the quote unquote dream team, basically arranged it so that he could turn himself in to detectives at a specified time.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
does he do it?
No, as we all know.
I know.
He doesn't show up. And it's like we just never learned. We didn't learn when he fled in the Bentley.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we're surprised. But anyway, OJ
car chase of a lifetime.
Weirdest car chase of all time. It ended up looking like a parade for OJ, where he was literally escorted back.
Escorted him home.
100%. So he's got that weird ass friend of his. What's his name? AC something or another. This friend that just cannot give OJ any tough love whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
OJ's driving the car.
Yes.
Right? And then you have, apparently, OJ is sitting in the passenger seat and he's clutching a picture. I really like to think in my head that it was a picture of himself. I couldn't find who the picture was.
You're probably right.
I don't think it was his children for reasons I'm about to get into. Who knows? He's holding a picture of himself, right? He's got $10,000 in cash and his passport. Does that sound like a suicidal person now?
No, but it's probably a picture with him and his Heisman.
Oh, 100. That's what I picture in my head.
Yes, that's what it is.
He's holding his little baby picture
He's
with
so
his
sad.
Heisman.
He's so sad that he's about to lose his Heisman.
And he's so suicidal that he needs $10,000 in cash and a passport.
Yeah.
So the friend is hysterical. He's calling. He's going to kill himself. No, OJ, no, blah, blah, blah. OJ's resting his chin on the barrel of a gun.
I don't think it's loaded.
I don't either. There's not one in the chamber.
No way.
There's just no way there's one in the chamber. I just don't believe it. So anyway, he gets escorted back to his home. He gets out of the car and there's people everywhere. Everywhere. It's literally like a rock star. Welcome back to Rockingham.
Right.
Right? That quick.
Literally
there's people everywhere.
With signs from like bridges.
Yes. I mean, this is just wild to me. He gets a hero welcome home after a high-speed chase. High speed. Sometimes they were going like 40 miles an hour with 800 police cars. And we have had gnarlier chases on 470. There was a woman who got carjacked on 470. Did you ever see this?
No.
It was unbelievable. They spun this guy's car out. They pulled him out at gunpoint. Like, cops know how to deal with this, especially if somebody's driving like 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And they talk about that in the documentary. They say stuff like that, where they're like, if this was any other human, this is not how this would go down.
Well, and one particularly fiery helicopter pilot says, if he was black, this wouldn't have happened.
I know.
Basically implying that if he was treated like other black people, specifically the people that the LAPD was already abusing pretty terribly, he never would have walked away from this. But he did.
No, he would have died back then, not
he would have died back then. He would have died now.
Oh, for sure. But what I'm saying is,
thing.
He would have died back then and not a month ago.
Oh, no. That's exactly right. Yeah. So the chase happens. He comes back. He tells the police, I wouldn't have hurt you. I wouldn't have hurt you. The interesting thing that I found was some communication with the negotiator. And the negotiator tried to bring up his kids, tried to bring up different things to help him be safe. And OJ would just change the subject to himself. So the negotiator goes to OJ's house at Rockingham. OJ's family's kicking it. They're eating sandwiches. They're chilling. Nobody's hysterical at OJ's house, probably because they've learned by now he gets away with everything and there's nothing to see here, right?
And you're saying this is while they're still doing the
while the chase is happening.
Oh, yeah.
So the negotiator walked around the house and goes, every picture in this house is of OJ. So what the negotiator did was got OJ talking about himself. And you know what? He liked that.
Yeah.
He liked that. He's like, I'll come home talk to this guy. He wants to talk about me.
Uh-huh.
So we definitely see these kind of themes of narcissism already coming up for OJ. They've been present, but I don't know
Yeah.
that they're ever more present than a hostage slash suicide negotiator being like, tell me more about yourself, OJ. And he just can't wait.
Tell me about all of your accomplishments and everything you've done.
Tell me about your
Doesn't
kids.
he-
No, wait. No, wait. I want to tell you about my Heisman.
Yeah, I want to tell you about myself.
Myself.
Doesn't he make them wait till the evening to come
Yes.
out so he doesn't probably have to be seen?
Yes. So OJ is controlling this the way OJ does,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up until he gets into the beginning stages of the trial. And the prosecution is livid that this
Mhm.
man got away, that we trusted this person to turn himself in, all of it. You
Well,
know?
they were like at the beginning, they didn't hold him because they were like, well, he's not a flight risk because everyone knows who he is. I'm like, you guys are so dumb.
100%.
If I'm OJ,
100%.
OJ has all the means to get away.
Absolutely.
He probably had his own
Absolutely.
private jet to get away.
Yes. And so I'm not going to touch on every part of the trial because there's so
Valid.
much and we know so much about it.
Yes.
But as you know, we have teams of attorneys on both sides. We have Marcia Clark, who is such a bona fide badass and really had a rough go
Mm-hmm.
at that point. We have Christian, what's his last name, Nat? Christian
Oh, I don't know.
Donaldson or something like that.
Yeah, he was the defense too, right?
No, prosecution.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's what I meant.
Yeah, they brought on a black prosecutor to try to even things out a little bit. And then there was another prosecutor, I can't remember his name. And then the defense, you've got Robert Shapiro, you've
Yep.
got Johnny Cochran, and Robert Kardashian, he probably would roll over in his grave knowing what that has all turned into now. But
Yeah.
Robert Kardashian was a part of that legal team. So this was the dream team legal team. So when they go into jury selection, this was really complicated because all the LAPD stuff is going on. Rodney King, OJ's living in Brentwood. We just have this really challenging jury dynamic. And if you ever want to be truly fascinated, do research on how they choose jurors. It's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was the people who could be on the jury were people who could be there for 6 to 9 months, which is not most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they ended up with a jury that was viewed as sympathetic more to the defense. That was the take from both parties, right?
Yeah.
OJ is quoted as saying about the jury, if this jury convicts me, maybe I did do it.
Which is a wild thing to say. Also, really quickly, I don't know if this matters that much. It was Christopher Darden.
Christopher Darden. Okay, perfect.
Christopher Darden. He had a rough go too. Oh, he got like nailed to the cross, basically.
Oh, railroad.
Sorry, I wanted to jump in. I wrote his name down and I was like, where is it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So OJ leaving Easter eggs like Taylor Swift, right? I mean, he's just throwing them out right and left. If this jury convicts me, maybe I did do it,
Right.
It's wild. In the course of the trial, we all know he ends up getting off. Everybody really did have an opinion about this. Now, you have a lot of people who wanted to see a finding of not guilty just because Black people were being really brutalized by the LAPD, to be honest, and with riots happening and all of this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So there were a lot of people really invested in him having a successful interaction with the criminal justice system and getting. Then you had the other half of the world that's thinking, oh, he's for sure guilty. Like, are we talking about the same thing?
Right.
It's clear. I mean, who else would have done this?
Well, and I was talking to someone, and I won't say who they are, but I was talking to someone a few weeks ago about this, and they basically were like, they could have had someone like recording it, and he still would have been found innocent.
Yes.
With how obvious the evidence was.
Yes. And what they found that was really interesting when they interviewed the jurors after. So the jury was on it for, I want to say 6 months. I'd have to look at exactly how long. I think it was 6 months.
Oh.
They were told to prepare to be ready 9 months in case they had to be on it for 9 months, 6 months.
Mhm.
They return a verdict in 3.5 hours.
Which makes me so angry.
I
Like,
know, it's upsetting.
and here's the thing, I get both sides. So part of it, they were like, we had already been doing this for, 6 months, however long. Okay, yeah. So on one hand, yes, I get it. You want to go home. And you've already put in 6 months of work on this. Like, don't skimp out.
Give it time.
Give it time. Look at everything.
They did not. And most of them said, okay, there were a few bumbles by the prosecution. Okay.
Yes, there were.
They got played like a fiddle a couple of times.
They did.
OJ didn't take his arthritis medicine for his hands. And so, of course, the glove isn't going to fit. That contributed to the
He
glove.
also had latex gloves on under.
Latex gloves under, and also gloves shrink when they're wet anyway. So if that's all wet with glove, it's whatever. But anyway, that was this big moment, and it was the prosecution that went for it, and then it didn't fit. And and we've all seen the footage, I think most of us, of OJ looking surprised, looking at his hand like, see?
Literally. And then he stands up. Then he stands up like a moment of history. He's like, "No." Like, look, it doesn't fit, everybody.
And Johnny Cochran,
theatrical act.
If it doesn't fit, we must acquit, right? That becomes the big thing. So what happens is the glove is a big point. The other point is this becomes a civil rights debate more than a murder trial. It really becomes about that. Again, here's the truth. That was a very real thing going on.
Yes, both exist.
Should that have overtaken the trial of the likely murderer of Nicole and Ron? Absolutely not. But
absolutely not.
It did. It just became big. Johnny Cochran did that, and it became something so much bigger than a murder trial.
Yeah. I'm going to be honest with you. Watching Johnny Cochran, I am not a fan of that human either. I'm not a fan of him, nor am I a fan of that freaking cop, Mark Furman.
Mark Furman is an ass.
Both. Mark Furman's a total ass. And I mean, yes, the things he did and the things he said were horrible, but both of those humans just, I mean, I don't know.
Well, we should tell them why we hate Mark Furman. So Mark Furman, again, LAPD's finest on the night that all this happened, is a bona fide racist. I'm sorry. He made racist comments throughout the course of his life. He wasn't honest with the prosecution that he had this history, so it all got exposed in the trial.
Which made him look like an idiot.
It made him look like an idiot, and he is one of the biggest reasons why there wasn't justice for Nicole and Ron. I put a lot of that fault on Mark Furman just being a terrible human and not being honest about that. From jump. He needed to just say, I'm the worst. I'm a racist. If you put me on the stand, I'm going to screw up the case. That would have been helpful.
Yeah. Or if he would have just owned it, like even being on the stand, like, yes, in my past, I said some stupid stuff.
Well, and he was even defensive in the, I can't with him. He was even defensive in the documentary, which
he was an idiot.
So annoying.
Yeah.
So anyway, at the end of the day, the jury goes out 3.5 hours. They come back in. They acquit O.J. Simpson. Half the country is happy about that and feel like justice was served. Half is not. A lot of the jury members, and this comes out in the documentary too, saw this as payback for Rodney King.
Yep.
And the fact that the officers were not held accountable in the Rodney King situation and the drugs and everything else.
Yeah.
So that all happens, but we're not done. We're not done because OJ still had to face Ron Goldman's father, who is a genuine badass and would not let it go. He had to face him in the civil case.
Yep.
And so we're going to pick up with the civil case and the psychology and the heart of this case in our next episode, part 2.
Stay tuned, our forensic friends.
Stay tuned. It gets better from here. I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.